We start out on this new road. No turning back. But we have our ancestors with us. We're gonna continue to dance with them. Dreaming them. Calling them. Being them. We are becoming what we were.
It is part of that Mayan prophecies.
7 triangles of light.
Keep walking. You are the spirit of Unapu. Keep walking. We the human, we are doing the spirit of Unapu.
People who say that the gods made them from corn. They planned their lives according to the heavens. Well-versed in astronomy, using a sophisticated mathematics, they calculated the movements of the night sky thousands of years into the past and thousands of years into the future. They knew that the universe moved in cycles. Their lives were ruled by the rhythms of the natural world, planting and harvesting, birth and death, just as the great tree of life emerges from the earth.
Always, they're connected. Science and religion.
In dreams, we learn from the Maya gods when to plant and when to harvest, when to set the fire, and when to do the corn ceremony.
What we're digging up, what we're coming up with is part of our history. And the men that lived here are some of the greatest men we've ever had. And it's a fact that we're getting to know more and more and more about the life of these people.
They still maintain their customs. They still maintain their ways of organizing their societies. And it's very exciting to see how much of the ancient Maya way of life is still alive as well.
Because American history does not begin in 1492 with Columbus. It begins in 200 BC with the first Maya king who wrote his name on a stone. What is happening now is the people who made these places, people like Yashpak or Bird Jaguar or Pakal, are getting back their voices. They are becoming real to us and speaking to the people of the 20th century about who built this place and why and what they felt and what they thought about the world. These are not anonymous people anymore.
You are the spirit of Unapu.
Just drag the mic
Keep
as close to you
walking.
guys as
We
this.
the human, we are doing the spirit of
Go a little bit
Unapu.
higher. Perfect. Perfect.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yo, yo, yo.
Lost Aslan, LA natives.
That's right. Yo, guys, I really appreciate the support. Welcome back. We took a day off, right, Zero?
Yeah. Was it Father's Day? Did I take
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
I even forgot that it was Father's Day.
I usually don't make a big deal of it, but when my kids, now that they're bigger, they did something. They're like, "What do you want to do, Dad? We want to spend the day with you." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay. Well, let me cancel the podcast first because you guys are important, and let's go." And we spent the day at the beach, and it was my partner and my sister and all my children, and it was probably one of the best Father's Day I had. So thank you for allowing me to take a little bit of time off, and you too, Mondo, for taking a short notice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Today's a very special show.
Yeah.
Right, Zero?
Yeah, because we get to sit with our relatives and talk like we should, and really clear the air that there's never ever been any hard feelings before or after, because I've been doing this work for 25 years, speaking up for Native rights, and every time I spoke up, someone had something to say about it. So I'm glad that we're at the point where we can, first share space and ceremony, right? And know that that kind of just lays the groundwork to family. No one should be getting out of control here, because the medicine is present and so are the ancestors. So we talked for a while, and
5 hours to be exact.
Yeah, it was a long talk, and both sides could see each other, you know, and the beauty of it was resolution, and in whatever way it came, or for whatever reason it was here.
Right. And as I always mention, since day one, since the podcast inception, there was only one goal, guys, was to promote Indigenous hip hop music. Am I right, Zero?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you know, from growing up from 94 till now, you know, when we really started waking up, we developed these certain respectful things that we usually do, you know, and I should have known that, but I didn't think about it with this name. I thought about it when it came to the people, or like a ceremony, something that was like, you know, open to the public, like something like that, but not in a podcast or in my production company that I'm working on with Armando, exposing Indigenous hip hop of all over this continent. I mean, Armando's talking to going all the way to Chile. So it's really a global movement, you know, bringing our story to the forefront in a good way.
So guys, we have Jessa in the building. Jessa, go ahead and give us one of the most dopest intros you could ever give us. Go ahead.
No pressure. Me'iha Wenehingam Natwanyane, Jessa Calderon. I am here representing myself and my family. I have my relative Jose here with me, who is a complete badass, who is also a Tongva relative. And he represents Homeboy Industries as well as him and his family. So we're happy and honored to be here and to show you all that we can come to peaceful resolutions when we discuss things, you know, that coming with tobacco and or medicines and coming in a good way, that's the way that things should be done. And I'm grateful that we were able to get to that point and have the resolutions that we had. So thank you all for the love and support that you've shown Zero and his family, and that you've shown me and my family.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel like I have to speak up for my partner who couldn't be here today. And she had a humongous part in it. And I can't sit here today on this podcast without mentioning Jenny, because, you know, she's really the one that kept me grounded and kept me focused. And I have to just mention her name, Jenny Silva, Jenny Dula, whatever you guys know her by. She's more famous than me, so I don't know why I'm doing it. But, yeah, just wanted to say her name because Jessa talked. And, you know, she would have been here if she could. And yeah, so the beauty of it was hearing people's side, I guess. Not that there was sides, because I didn't really feel like that was, but like I said before, growing up in this movement from 94 till now, you learn a few things, you know, and people, you know, and we try our best as, you know, guests or Chicanos or whatever you want to, you know, label yourself. But, you know, there's also a dysfunction with our community as well, you know, and there's
a lot of trauma, bro.
Yeah. There's a spectrum to us. Yeah. There's a spectrum. You know, there's like, I mean, I have a storefront on Whittier Boulevard, and I'm dealing with the locals there. And they're like, you don't know who you're messing with. And I'm like, man, I grew up here. Like, I'm not your enemy. I'm just telling you, don't drink in public in the parking lot. That's it. And, you know, there's a spectrum to our whole family. You know, there's the walling out guys, and then there's people like myself who really disciplined myself and took it serious. And not that anybody else didn't, but I'm saying that I know I can only speak for me, my kids, and my dedication to whatever I speak of for 25 years. You know, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Me'iha wen nehinkum Etoña ne Jose Ariano. And I guess what I would like to say is like just appreciating allowing the voices to be heard. You know, because one of the things that and reconnecting with my culture, because, you know, I grew up in the 90s too, but I grew up a part of a subculture, which was the gang culture. And there were certain practices, you know, and certain values that we stood by. And one of the things with reconnecting to my true identity and my culture and just learning from the elders is that, you know, how a lot of our ancestors felt was invisible, you know, and not seen. And so, like, you creating space for this conversation to be had, homie, is very honorable.
Yeah.
You know, and I appreciate that. And
thank you.
And I think, like, ultimately, regardless of what part of the continent, you know, you're indigenous to, is our ancestors have not been seen, you know. And now we're in a place where, like, to be fully seen is to also be, you know, to be able to fully see somebody is to also be fully present to the trauma, generational trauma, historical factors, you know, that have, if we're talking about just specifically like this area, is the things that have occurred here in this area, you know, to our ancestors, and to be present to that, you know what I mean? It's big, homie. It's honorable, and I tip my hat to that. And I also want to honor you, Jessa, and because I wasn't gonna do all that. Like, I don't do all the whole Instagram thing and the going.
Now, can I ask you why?
Yeah. So me personally, that's not my forte. You know,
Absolutely.
I deal with certain things on a daily basis, and my gifts are maybe different. I feel like I can go that route, but I also feel like it's needed. Like, you know, there's I think we're all dealing with different parts of what has happened and occurred to all of our ancestors. And I honor you, Jessa, in being the one to say, you know, I'm willing to put my face out there and willing to confront whatever this is. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? And have a conversation around it, because that's honorable, you know, and I stand with you in that, relative. Thank you. It's just, we got to get to a place where we can hear each other and see each other. You know what I mean?
I think I also want to come on, you know, to discuss the whole thing, because it wasn't just like I didn't want to give people a voice. I was a little confused, one, because, you know, I've known Jessa for, like, since the start of my career, I think. I mean, I've seen you at events, and I just didn't want to, like, I didn't know how to respond. Like, I didn't know what it was about first, you know, and then once I figured it out, and then, you know, there was a birthday involved with my older son who was 21. So it was just a confusing thing that I didn't want to have a knee-jerk reaction. I'm kind of like you, where I don't want to deal with it on social media. Why? There's no need for it. Not saying that Jessa did anything bad by putting it on wherever it was, because you're right. This story has to be told. Exactly. However the conflict came about, or whatever the friction was, if I'm gonna go out there, really quick story. I went on Father's Day. I took my mom to go see my grandfather. Guess what? Went to Rhodes Hills. I felt really disconnected, and I felt like that connected me. You know, they connected me by being buried in Rose Hills, which is right here off the 60 freeway, right? Guess what? I didn't find them. I didn't find their grave. I stood there, and I went through every single thing. And what do I say on this show? I don't have an identity. I don't have a home. And then I go to Rose Hills, and I really can't even find my own grandfather buried in Rose Hills. You know what they told me? I said, Mom, we're coming back on next week, and me and you are going to that office, and we're digging that space up, and now I have to maintain it till the day I die, so that my grandkids and my mom, whoever wants to go see my grandfather, they know exactly where their thing is. So
you were able to locate it, though?
I'm sure. I know he's buried there. He paid a lot of money. He was a very hardworking individual. And they take you to it, and then they dig it out for you. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm coming on the podcast, like you're saying, give voice to this native story. I'm coming to the podcast, and I'm saying, I really don't know where, because that's been displaced for me for 200 years. And then metaphorically, in my real life, I go, wow, at least I know where my grandfather is at. And I go and I can't find him. You see? I'm giving voice to my own story, because I should know where my grandfather's buried. That plot should never be overgrown with grass. And I need to maintain it, just like I maintain the story of indigenous people.
Yeah.
And they need to maintain it. You know what I mean?
And I think, like, we need to maintain.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I think that's why, because I don't know much about the details. I'm just going to be all the way real with you.
Yeah.
I don't know much about, you know, the title of whatever this is called, the LA natives. But what I do know is, like, I know me personally, like, I now have a responsibility to my culture and to my ancestors and to my elders and to my relatives to say, like, yeah, we're still here, you know. in a good way, you know, and there's reason too beyond just like, oh, we're still here, and like recognize that, you know what I mean? Nah, there's actually like there's gifts of the elders still being around, and there's lessons and there's teachings that can benefit all of us. Like, okay, think about this in a sense, like this region of the earth, right? You know, you think about LA now, you think like Hollywood and all that stuff, and people travel from all kinds of different states to come here. Like you go to Santa Monica and be like, oh, where are you from? I'm from New York. I'm from Florida, you know, and you meet so many people that travel here, right? And some might say, well, they travel here for Hollywood or like the music industry, and that's a portion of the truth. But people have traveled here, and our ancestors traveled here, and they made their home here. There was a reason, because of the natural resources that are here, you know, this portion of the earth and what the weather is like, and our connection to the sea, and our connection to these animals that are here, our connection to these mountains, you know. It's all ancient, you know, and it's ancient and it's sacred. And there's teachings there that can help us, not like help us, but also help us like collectively, like help the people that are here, because now we're all here, you know what I mean? And we're living amongst each other, and we're in relation, like we're relatives, you know? But I think that sometimes what happens is that, you know, because it's not just about like, oh, we're here, like recognize the Tongva is here, you know? But it's like, what could we learn from the people that made this place their home? Like, what can I learn? What can I teach my children? Like, why are we here? Why have we all traveled here? Why did some of your, you know, ancestors travel here? And then, you know, like your grandfather you mentioned, and they made their home here, you know? There's ancient lessons and practices and teachings that connect us to the earth, but this specific portion of it, you know? And I think like ultimately, like what we're trying to say is like, if we can acknowledge that first, like we can all benefit from it and we can heal. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
And believe it or not, bro, like, you know my stance and all this. I'm just a hip hop head. Everyone knows that since day one. And, you know, your story just resonated to me, because that was one big element why we decided to name it LA Natives, because, you know, Los Angeles has a lot of elements to it, you know, like, I'm proud of being in Los Angeles, especially with my experience in hip hop. Like, it seems like it's the hub for where everyone comes and mingles and gets together and unite, right? Like, there's nothing like Los Angeles. All across the world, there's nothing like Los Angeles, bro.
That's right.
Right? It just, everyone flocks here for some weird reason, because of Hollywood, because of the status quo. But there's more to that,
There's
right?
more to it, yeah. And it's like, I guess one of the things too that when you think about like the not acknowledging certain things, certain elements, right? Like our relatives not acknowledging that it's not. I mean, it's harmful for us. It's harmful for all of us, you know. And we were just talking earlier about like when we travel to Wambly, you know, like I can move to Wambly, I can live there. I can live there for the next 20 years. But Wambly is ancient. You know what I mean? Like their ancestors been there for thousands of years. Like they know that land. You know, they know that land like the back of their hand. And me as somebody that's going out there, like I want to learn from them. I want them to be like my guides. You know, not to say like don't see me because I'm somebody that just moved there, but yeah, see me, of course, when we see one another. But like if I want to really understand like that region of the earth, like I'm gonna talk to the caretakers of that region of the earth and like, hey, like what does this plant mean, you know, or what is this bush, you know what I'm saying, or like these trails right here, you know, how long have they been here, you know,
or how can I honor it?
Yeah, how can I honor it, and how can it also help me like live, like how can this help my daily life, you know, and I guess that's kind of like more or less than anything is just like we're here, and our elders, we have elders that are here that can help us with that, you know. I work for a very large organization, and, you know, got a lot of big accolades and awards and different stuff, and a lot of people that come there and they invest in this place, and we're known, you know, throughout the world. And we also know and understand like the village that we're located in is sacred, you know, and ancient, and the best medicine that we can get, whether it be from somebody traveling from a different country or different state, is going to be right here in the village that we're located in, because it's ancient, you know, and people have lived here for thousands and thousands of years, and they've sustained their lives, and not just their physical lives, but their emotional and spiritual lives. You know, there's just so much history that, and one of the things too, I don't want to take up too much space, but
no, this is the podcast to do that. You take your time, because I don't like to censor anything. Like some people, there's an example, so you can keep going. Right. This person said, you know, I don't know how to describe this. I'm a what? European rape? That's what it was, European rape. Now say what you're going to say. You know, keep going. It's not, this is a place where you get to say whatever you want. That's my point.
We have
keep it going.
We have a diverse audience of people that know exactly what you're talking about, people that are neutral in between, and then people have no idea what you're talking about.
So this is your time to inform a way. I'm going to stay quiet.
So trip this then. Yeah. So there's been so much historical trauma, right? That a lot of the stories or a lot of the things that we see every day, right? We don't really know the backstory behind a lot of these things, right? I'll give you an example. So, and maybe you guys have heard of it, maybe you haven't. There's a revival, a Christian revival called the Azusa Revival. Have you ever heard of that?
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay, well, it's a big thing. If you go on YouTube and you look it up, it's a big movement. It's a wonderful, amazing movement. It's spiritual.
Very healing.
It's very healing. And it's, if you go on YouTube, like when you put in Azusa, the first thing that'll pop up will be a Christian revival called Azusa. And the original spiritual element to that movement was a Thungva woman named Azusa.
A healer.
A healer. She had healing hands. She prayed for people. She healed a priest. And, you know, you guys probably know the city of Azusa, which is nearby. Yeah. So the thing about it is like when we begin to acknowledge like some of these things, then the truth, the authentic truth, the historical truth, it presents itself and it helps all of us heal. You know, because then we're not, so we grow up living these narratives out. You know, we grow up thinking like, not to discuss religion or practices or whatever, but like this way is the only way and this is the right way and this is the wrong way. You know, but if you go back far enough, or if that story was shared, or that story's passed down, or if that story's highlighted, then we go, whoa, she was a Native woman. That big revival, you ask people about it, they'll be like, I know about that, homie. They do that in this state and that state. And you go, wow, the original kind of, you know, experience was provided by a Native woman, a Thungva woman.
And the power is in her name.
You know, and she had healing hands and praying hands. And so it's great, like, to be able to do that, and for you guys to be able to do that and say, like, yeah, here's a space, like, yeah, this is Los Angeles, and a lot of people travel here. And
absolutely,
man. Bro. It's Hollywood, and it's rap, and this place is ancient and sacred, and these hills and that beach and that water and these animals and these plants, they can help all of us.
Yeah. They have, because they poach it.
Right.
They poach it, and people actually really, I know it's not picked in the proper way, but I know that there's people, like Armando said, there's like a spectrum to everything. And maybe this kid who's from East LA, who just saw me burn sage on LA natives, and now he's connected somehow, some way. Oh, I found this. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that they are magical plants, and you know, sometimes they overpick them, and that's an issue too that we didn't know about, or we didn't you know, announce quicker, or whatever, right? Discuss or make it a topic. But I guess another thing, and I hope I'm not seeming defensive, because I'm not. I just want to be clear, you know, because clarity for me is everything.
Yeah.
And when me and Armando decided to do the podcast or do any shows, it wasn't done in that way. It was just done by picking talent, connections we knew, venues we knew. It wasn't done in a way. I know early 90s, and early 2000s, it was done in a communal way. It was done like in an art community way, because there was no professional investors or any professional stages that were going to share our story, right? So we put in the first 20 years of brunt work, but, you know, people go on with their families. They no longer play that music, but I'm still active. I still have that message still. So I hooked up with Armando. And see, it's not really a story that would go, oh, let's tell the story of this. Now it is, because of this whatever it wasn't, I didn't even want to call it a conflict. It was a voice that needed to be heard that we didn't realize we weren't hearing.
Yeah.
That's more of what it was. It was never, ever a conflict. But to bring clarity to it is that we were never a local artist trying to give information about Indigenous. I have a very strong Indigenous platform. I've been speaking about Indigenous rights since 94. Never tied to a particular tribe or anything. The only thing I could cling on to was Aslan, right? That I heard somewhere.
Which that's feed, man. And like, so I lived a certain way for a certain amount of years, and I had certain practices. I lived like that, and it wasn't wrong in my eyes. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up. And I went to prison, and I spent many years in there too, and I lived like that. I responded a certain way for many years, and it was never wrong in my eyes, ever. And then I came to a place where I was taught something different, you know, and that right there was like, for me, it was one of those things where, so I've known about my culture. I know who I was as a kid, and so I'll share a little bit because maybe it can make sense to you. So I wanted to be Mexican, and I didn't know how to speak Spanish, and because in my neighborhood, you know, the culture was like Mexican American culture. I always knew I was Indian since I was born, you know, since I can remember. But because it was predominantly like, you know, Mexican American, like, all right, well, even there was a story that my great grandparents said, like, you gotta actually like pretend you're Mexican because you'll be treated better, like if you do that, right? So kind of passed down. We call it generational trauma, whatever. This was like a survival technique. Mechanism, yeah. And so I said, bam, all right, cool, feed man. I want to be, learn as much Spanish as I can. You know, go to prison. Go to prison now, and it's that culture, right? And in prison, you know, we go to the hole, we go to the shoe. We're learning about, you know, a certain culture. We're connected to the Aztecas, you know, the Mayans, and learned, you know, Nahua in the hole. But something inside of my soul was like, okay, wait, this is not like your history. This is a history, you know, and different things happen to different tribes and different regions of the earth. But where's your history, Jose? Like, what are you connected to? Like, what's your ancestors' history? And I'm connected to this portion of the earth. Like, my ancestors are from this portion of the earth. And so having to, like, reconnect with that and reconnect to practices of, like, you know, going back to, like, land acknowledgement of, like, okay, who are the caretakers of this land? Okay, boom, that's one thing. So with us, too, like, with Homeboys, we've been around 33 years. We never acknowledged my tribe. You know, we never in the morning said, hey, we want to give a shout out, you know, to the original caretaker. Right. Do you get what? Because we did good work. Like a gang of home. My life changed because of that place. And recently was like an epiphany to go, okay, like this is the right thing to do, you know, because these are ancient practices. It's not even something that we created. It's something that an elder said, you know, somebody that understands the culture. And this is from what my understanding now that I understand it is like, this is in every region of the earth. It's not just Los Angeles. Like, this is, you go to,
you acknowledge the people of whose lands you're on. It's just a native
It's
trait.
just a native thing. And so now I understand, like, oh, okay, it's fine. Like, I went many years without doing that. But now that I know better, then I could do better, you know, and do different. And I get it, what you're saying, like, my organization, we didn't start out to go like, yeah, we're going to make sure we tell the story of the Tongva.
Yeah.
You know, we're not, but we're going to do good work in this portion of the earth. Now, the original caretakers is one thing, but who have suffered the most trauma here? You know, like the federal building in downtown LA, that parking lot across the street is where they had natives in bondage, in slavery, locked up. Like, there's a reason why that federal building's there.
Yeah.
They hung them there as well.
You know, they shipped them to different portions. They'd shipped them to the islands from there, you know. Placito Olvera, you know, the history there. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happened. And
sex slavery.
You know, and it's just being able to, because we can never heal if we can never pinpoint, like, what happened. Like, so it's like in my own individual life, I can go, like, why did I gangbang all these years? You know, like, I used to think, oh, I did it because I liked it. Like, this was I chose that life. I had to identify, like, damn, I grew up without a dad. My mother was on drugs. Like, and my mother has passed on. And I'm saying that not to dishonor my mother. Absolutely. I'm saying that because I want to free my mother. And I want to free myself. So what was her life like? But I can never get to the healing part of it if I can never identify the truth of what happened. You know, and us as a community, as a society, like, we need to heal. You know, and I'm sure that you guys probably, I mean, we all as a society can see like things are not right. The way we treat each other, you know, how things happen, even with our own, even with the injustice and like how we respond to it. You know, like, where's the healing at, right? We can, I would say, and this is just my own take on it, is if we cannot see the wound, then we cannot heal the wound. So generational trauma of what happened in this region of the earth, you know, identifying, okay, boom, okay, these people are still here. You know, how can us inviting them to heal, inviting us to heal, can collectively heal our society, you know?
Yeah. If can I piggyback off of that? That's so accurate, because every single person listening to this podcast, your ancestors, all of our ancestors have faced this kinds of trauma, just in different parts of this continent, right? So for me, it's really important to acknowledge that our ancestors aren't the only ones who suffered. You know, my statement is that we're the ones who suffered here in that way, and all of our indigenous relatives suffered at these same hands in their ancestral villages. Right? And so I acknowledge that we all have genetic traumas that we need to heal together. And that's why I do push so hard for healing. And to let people know, I see you too. I see you for your pain and your suffering too. You know, and I want to be here for your healing any way that I can participate in your healing. But it's just really important for me to ask, you know, understand whose ancestral lands you're on, because I feel so often, because of the history that hasn't been told here, from the Spaniards erasing us, from the Mexican era erasing us, to the American era erasing us, and then other indigenous people coming here, Native American from the States, coming here for work-related, you know, things, the government trying to get them off of their reservations and what have you. They came here being very dismissive too. So we have this sense of feeling invisible through each of these erasure stories. And so I guess I want to help you understand that, to see that podcast name and knowing that it's an indigenous branded podcast, that's what hurts, right? That's what says, oh, wow, I'm feeling erased again, right? And so that's what I wanted you to understand. And so, you know,
I guess, but are you done?
Well, if I could just say, you know, so I did reach out to you through DM, and the reason why I took it to social media was that feeling of still not being heard. But to be honest, I think it was meant to happen that way, right? Because it ended up opening something greater than us to show other people their own hurts. And I think people were able to identify in both aspects, you know, the Tongva people being voiced, right? Being able to be heard, because it wasn't happening. We didn't feel like it was happening. And this sit down happening, I think, is a way to bring that awareness to the listeners of your podcast who didn't even know that Tongva people were here, and to bring awareness to those who saw the podcast and thought that it was Tongva Ran, because they were confused. So what we're able to do here now is to ease that confusion and bring light.
Well, I can only speak for the information that has been coming to the podcast and what we've got on our streams. I didn't feel anybody got confused about anything. I didn't know that LA natives represented or pointed a direction towards Tongva. I had no idea of that. It goes along the lines of like what you're saying. You're trying to be Mexican when you were growing up, right? Well, one day I was some güero, right? That's what everybody used to call me, until I start crying, and my stepfather, who is half Apache, grabs me by my shirt and says, "Stop crying. You are a warrior. You're native. You don't even know you're native." And he was drunk out of his head, but ever since that moment, he started telling me these Apache words. Like, come here, but it was in his Apache language or whatever. It planted a seed so deep in me with trauma. But I started walking this road of native. Then I got to the early 90s and we found Aslan. But not Aslan, the gang Aslan. We found the harmonious being Aslan. The spirulina, the chia, the cacao, the maca. The real essence of it, not the facade of warriorism, but the spiritual connection with it. I was a creative saying LA, my own LA. Like in my head, this was what it means. But since Armando said this was a diverse community, I said it could be for whatever.
Los Angeles is such a diverse community for me. I've born in Los Angeles, raised in Los Angeles. I'm proud to run one of the biggest hip hop websites based out of Los Angeles. I give a voice to the unheard.
But it was just...
I throw some of the best concerts in Los Angeles, and there was no ill intent, no intention like me. I'm just like clueless. Like, yo,
like we don't know.
Like,
we didn't.
I identify as an LA native, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like I'm from a different spectrum. I'm from a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Like it wasn't in our... It was a creative thing. Like I
and
didn't
like
even,
for me,
yeah,
I didn't even put...
And guys,
like,
and for me, I feel like I'm blessed right now because it's like ultimately I'm the blame guy, like me. I'm the one that hit up Zero and was like, yo, man, I have all this podcast equipment, and this is what we kind of talk about in every episode. Like, hey, man, I just had an idea. I got this podcast equipment. Let's open up a podcast because I'm such a fan of Indigenous hip hop. You know, I wasn't really too familiar with a whole bunch of artists. The only one I was kind of familiar with was El Vuh. Zero's a part of. You know, I grew up listening to El Vuh since I was 16 years old. I remember walking into Stonewood Mall, going into a Mexica store, and they had Little Capone, they had Conejo, you know, much love to Conejo, that's my brother right there, you know, and then they had an album called Black and Red Ink, Intro to El Vuh. I popped that in, man, it blew my mind away. It was finally something that, you know, I could identify with without, you know, being scrutinized by my parents. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, growing up in the early 90s, man, being first generation, all my parents wanted to do was work and just, you know, do the normal thing, you know, and I'm not about that. Am I right? So that being said, it was a full-blown creative thing. And this is what everyone knows. The tens of thousands of streams that we have across Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the thousands of views that we have all across YouTube, our devoted, diehard listeners knew exactly what our intention was. And I want to apologize to you, Jessa, and make you understand that there was no ill intent whatsoever because I just come from a whole different background.
Like it was
and like for me, I feel like a vessel. I feel like being blessed because if I didn't create this podcast, we wouldn't even be in this table. Yeah. I wouldn't even be. I wouldn't even give a shit about the Indigenous hip hop community. Am I right, Zero?
Yeah.
Like it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm a vessel, like a vessel flying in the air and just trying to create, you know, unity amongst the indigenous community.
Which came about. We talked about this. All that stuff is like really kind of like, I guess, to for the wider community so that they could see like how dialogue gets done. And it's very hard for people like myself to stay still and let someone correct them. Right, you know what it's like. Maybe not so much because I grew up in the same barrios, but I never had any affiliation with anything. I had to live by those reglas just by default. You know what I mean? And so, what I'm trying to say though, but when I got to this point in my career, when I started this podcast, it was all creative. So I went, okay, this means this to me, but I know who's gonna, you know, attach itself to me. We went 5 months into it, and I swear to God, not one person said, hey, is this connected to the Tongvas? I'm confused.
Oh, I heard somebody did talk to you about it. There was a conversation. But you know what? I think we spent 5 hours talking about this.
But
and I kind of feel...
I just want to be clear about it, like, so that everybody knows that the creative part of it, and it wasn't, how would I know? How would I know that is going to represent some trauma? Now, the fact that it did... And the fact that we know about it now, you know what Armando told me the day after we started dealing with this? He's all, I want to know everything about the Tongvas. I want to know everything. Like, why is this happening? I want to know everything. And it was like,
So something.
Yeah,
I'm
that's why I chilled. I chilled with responses. I just said, let them talk, because I can't get in the middle of this is why I didn't respond as well really quickly, is because I know the mentalities of everybody I'm dealing with. I've been doing this for 5 months, and some people are at square one, and some people are really educated. Some people are even I think maybe one person, they didn't complain, but they go, hey, how come you don't shout out the Tongvas? And that's when I started saying it on my podcast. Hey, you're right. This is, it's like, it was nothing, because we were a podcast and a production company. But now we give voice to everything and everyone, and this happens to be one of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess.
In a good way.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think that something good comes out of everything, and I think like a kite only rises against the wind, so there has to be some, type of conflict in our lives, or, like something has to, I don't know. I appreciate it though. Like I appreciate the conversation, and yeah, like I didn't even know what to expect coming here, right? And I don't know like who's watching or what this is about, but since we're having I kind of like having open dialogue about it, So I don't know exactly, because I haven't followed you guys. This is my first time ever really.
Absolutely, brother.
So in terms of like the podcast and what it's about, if it was about like indigenous tribes, or just being native, or just being connected to something, right? And I think all of us are yearning for that, right? All of us brown people, right? That we grow up and, we connect to like whatever it is, these subcultures like in the barrio, or these clans, or like you said, Aslan, why Aslan? I don't know. Whatever it was that moved your heart to connect to that. Absolutely. Mine was initially because I ended up in this subculture that in prison, like this is what it was. You go to the back and you're gonna know about these certain tribes, and you're gonna know about this certain dialect. And so we're yearning to connect. Like our spirit, the spirit is strong, right? And it's moving us like to connect to something cultural. And so like, and I do appreciate like the saying, if we are talking about, like, say for instance, this was a cooking show, and there, or a specific, and we're talking about a specific culture, we're talking about Chinese food or whatever it is, right? There's a specific dish that we leave out. I'm sure, like, somebody would say like, hey, that's a cultural dish or whatever. Like, you guys are talking about a specific, culture, and they cook a certain food, but you missed this one ingredient that, they consistently use, that's cooking show, whatever. We're talking about indigenous communities, and we're in a historical, place where, our tribe, like I said, going back to has been here, and we're kind of missing that. You know what I mean? I think that is a good thing, that if we're talking about that though, like if that's what the podcast is about. If it's about,
like for me, this is what, if someone asks me what the podcast was about and what it was attended since day one, for me, this is my answer, bro. And I think you're gonna love this. All right. I could care less what tribe you're from. I could care less what you identify with. If you're indigenous and you spit hip hop, I need you on this podcast. That's my whole element. You know what I'm saying?
So
but what is it in you that says, like, what is it in you? Like, I'll just ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask whatever you want, brother.
I want to just specifically target indigenous rappers. Why not just rappers in general?
Because of me. Because I've been a 20-year indigenous hip hop artist from Los Angeles since 1996. I've been a part of music, and I've been singing the same message. So when as I grew up in this culture, I know a lot of bands. I've traveled to Canada, I've traveled to Mexico, and I have a lot of connections. And for some reason, my group has made a classic album that people in Canada go, oh, I know that group. Yes, I'll be on that podcast. That's all it was. It wasn't like, I'm going to gather all the natives. It just happened to be one of the least accepted natives started a podcast to voice opinions about natives. And that's what it was.
And to answer your question, like, well, why are you so into indigenous hip hop, right?
Yeah, like specifically.
Right? Okay, like I'm going to get you right here.
Yeah.
Is because I hate ignorant hip hop.
Okay.
It drives me insane, bro. I hate hip hop that has no meaning. And for some weird reason in my history in hip hop, all indigenous artists have one thing in common. They speak for the people, that's who they represent.
Okay.
And they speak on issues that the mainstream won't necessarily highlight unless there's monetary gain for it. That's plain and simple. There's nothing to hide from that, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So,
and when I was 16, 17-year-old, I was stuck on Corrupt, Dog Pound, Dr. Dre, you name it. Yeah. Am I right?
Me too.
And then until I got that one CD of of someone that I could identify with telling me, yo, there's a different way of thinking, right? Knowledge of self should come first.
That's right.
And I don't care what nationality you come with. I don't care what ideology you come with. If I hear you say, yo, knowledge of self is first, then I'm all for it, bro. And that's what I want to promote, because I believe indigenous hip hop, doesn't matter what spectrum it comes from, east, north, southwest. There's that one thing that ties us all together, that it actually teaches kids to think differently, rather than, you know, get sucked into the status quo of listening to whatever the radio wants you to listen to. And then that defines hip hop to that child.
That's right.
You know? So, and another reason why is because when you dig into the podcasting world, there is no podcast out there in this world that highlights indigenous hip hop. And I've been asking our audience since day one, 40 episodes in, name me one podcast that is actually going out there and trying to give a voice to the unheard, you know? And that's what this podcast was about. That's what that logo was about. But now I respect the Tongva so much that I want to take initiative and change it up to where it's dedicated to the Las Atlan narrative. Because remember, like, if it was up to me, I'm telling Zero right now, yo, let's just change the whole name to the Zero of El Vuh podcast so we can compete with Joe Rogan. Because it seems like that's the route we need to take, because podcasts have different narratives.
So,
am I right?
real quick,
every podcast has their fans and their haters. That's my experience in podcasting. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being a businessman
I respect
on that side,
bro. I just would say, like, to everything that to whom much is given, much is required, right? Like, if I say that I'm going to do whatever it is, you know, in your guys' case, it's indigenous.
Yeah.
Like, there's a responsibility that comes with me wearing this shirt.
Absolutely.
Like, I got a responsibility to this.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? If there's two homies about to get down from two different barrios and I'm within the vicinity of that, like, I got a responsibility to that, or I got a responsibility to be a voice to the voiceless.
And
right?
this is what's great about this whole discussion, because I'm learning all this as I'm moving forward into this game, separating my hip hop side to where, okay, well, now I'm dabbling into the indigenous sphere, because you're not the only one that's told me that, brother.
Because there's so much trauma.
There's
dog.
so
like,
much.
This is the thing. Like, and
absolutely.
This is, because I also don't want to feel like we're,
and I feel
like a right and wrong type.
Oh,
of
no. And this is what we want for our podcast. You know what I'm saying? This is quite possibly one of the most important interviews that we've ever had in our 40 episodes in, brother.
Thank you.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because like I said, man, like, it wasn't. It was a creative thing. I did not cross my mind to include, like, it wasn't like, it was like,
I don't think you did.
yeah, like vetting talent and all that stuff. Like, for me, like, you want to know why they picked me for this podcast? It was urban native, Aboriginal, recognized by myself, no BIA cards, not enough blood quantum, so no government help. You're just a Mexican wetback Hispanic bastard class. You're only good for wiping my floors and taking out my trash. We get blamed for everything like an unwanted stepchild. We used to be brutally beaten just because of our style. In the 1940s, it was military officers. Now it's police officers chasing us in helicopters, running away from the mass incarceration. The new Jim Crow. Either we become a slave or become a hoe with no human rights and no control. Just a 10 by 10 box, purgatory in a cell, a wild native Aboriginal swallowed by hell. But my blood runs deep, and this is all prophecy. We knew they were coming from across the sea. That lost white brother who raped his own daughter and killed his own mother. No respect for his great-grandmother Earth. She's only here for profit. So drill up her dirt, pollute all her waters, pollute all her skies. I hope you know too that one day you will die. Greed and power can't last forever. Bankers and politicians ain't that clever. Be like you never. Not even great master Mayan mathematicians could have calculated their way out of this prison. So we accepted our death, humble with nature so we would never forget that a spirit of the sun, it has no bones, it has no skin, just a respect for life and a fire within. Humble, impeccable, a warrior of time, connected forever with the lights in the skies. That's what I've been rapping for 20 years.
That's powerful. Let's just take a second to everybody take that in.
It's
and let me just say, I hear you when you say you didn't think about us in that name, but that's why we're here today, to remind you of how invisible we've been in our own ancestral territory. That's the problem of why you didn't think about us in that name, right? And so we're here now to make it right, and then I'm very grateful that you've taken the opportunity to not only have us on this podcast to discuss this issue at hand, but, you know, to take 5 hours of our day to discuss this off camera, which was very necessary. But that's the problem, that you didn't think of us because history has erased us from your mind in our own ancestral homeland.
Absolutely.
If that's, yeah, I don't want to like say no, because it's truth. But how could you be, and I don't want to defend myself because I don't want to. This is why we're here. Brother said, why did we pick Indigenous Hip Hop? I spit that verse to show you why we represent Native hip hop.
And respect to that.
That's all. Because it's not like we're going, oh, Indigenous hip hop, we can make a ton of money off of that. Because they don't want to tell our story. If you listen to my 40 podcasts that I've done on Alley Natives, I'll tell you right now, every single major label artist that I've interviewed, I've told them to their face, they don't want to tell our story. Why do you want to tell a story of somebody you went and you took their land, you raped their children, you killed their women, you murdered their grandmas? Why would you tell that story? How can you twist that story into a positive story? That's why we don't ever have a story. That's why Alley Natives exist. Whatever story I had a Christian guy from Oklahoma, hardcore, like, we love Jesus. I'm glad you love Jesus, brother. I'm glad you love Jesus. This is your podcast. I'm not here to debate you about Jesus. I want to show your music on this platform. I want to show your story on this platform. It's kind of a general statement. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
From the beginning.
Right.
And you know, me learning all this in such a rapid time, especially with social media, bro. I'm the same way as you, man. I hate social media because it creates echo chambers and it creates people. It creates unnatural division, right? People could take something and twist it and manipulate it, and then it becomes something else. When that wasn't even the intention. The intention was the exposure. You know what I'm saying? And I'm learning all this. Like, I can admit now, you know, we are on Tongva land.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Because you know it now.
Yeah, now I know it. I'm sure now I know it.
Yeah.
You know?
And we want to put it on our website. We want to put it on our website. We want to link your videos.
And you're looking at a hip hop fan. That's all I have, bro. Like, I'm a dedicated underground hip hop promoter that helps voice the unheard. That's it. You know? Right? It's going to take some time, but we are considering rebranding. You know what I'm saying? Specifying Las Atlan on the logo, right? Because I feel like that's a good thing to do because we have such a great, diverse audience. They want us to continue to do this. And I will make sure that it's inclusive till the day I die, you know, because that's what I am here for. I feel like I'm a vessel for the Indigenous hip hop community for whatever that's worth. I know guys are going to be hating on me on that, but I'm on the outside looking in, fellas. People know that since day one, right? So why can't we compete with the standard norm? Why can't we compete with the status quo? What's wrong? Am I right?
Yeah. And you all deserve to have a voice at the table. You know, as Indigenous people, you guys, we have been ignored for too long, you know? Right. And so, yeah, having a space where your relatives can come on and you can see yourself, you know, that's definitely a beautiful thing.
In whatever mindset you are. Because I make it clear on where I am. I've been doing that for 25 years. But I don't have any voice like on whoever, you know, whatever ties you have to your faith, that's your faith. I'm not here to take the rug out from underneath you. You know, I respect it and I try to gently treat it. And that's what I tried to do with this situation. Because one, you are a woman. And I know how it is with Native. I know that lesson. So just be careful on how you. So I'd rather had not said nothing than say something wrong, right? Trying to explain myself, trying to go, well, I'm a race too. And then another slew of people and these echo chambers start. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So that I publicly apologized to you on my podcast because I just didn't know how to handle a woman being upset about something. And that's just how men are, period. When a woman's upset, we don't know how to handle it. And I just hope that the 5 hours, the show, my emotion, I'm not a quiet, passive man. I'm very up forward, but not with my people. I made that vow when I made this podcast, not with my people. Not with my people. I'd rather walk off and not use this mic if I have to debate my people. I don't want to do that.
Shout out to everyone.
Bring a professor who is in college, who has degrees and wants to debate. Bring him here. I'll go heads all day with that dude, but not my people.
Shout out to everyone in the chat. We see y'all. This is a legendary episode. We got Jess in the building. We got Zero of El Vuh in the building. We got Homeboy Industries in the building. Do we not?
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Jose Ariano.
Jose Ariano, brother. You know what? Like, you're VIP backstage at all my shows, brother. Like, best believe that, dog. You know? So obviously people know a little bit of context about what's going on but from the outside looking in, it was the logo, it was the name itself, LA Natives Podcast. We are in the works. It's going to take time, just to trust me. You know, you have my word.
We talked about
it. You know what I'm saying? We're considering rebranding, you know, altering the logo, doing what we can do best to unify this community, you know? Yeah. And for all the tongue of rappers out there, hit me up. Let's get you on this podcast.
There you go.
And shout out to you, Mondo, because I get, you know, the business aspect of it. It was a tough thing for you to sit there and make these agreements. So thank you for seeing us and doing what we believe to be the right thing. We love you for that.
Absolutely.
That's one thing that LA Natives will always do is we'll always have a dialogue with our own people. Whether I don't care how mad you are at us, I will always have a dialogue, and I'll be clear. I'll be clear because I only speak in truth. It took me a long time to live like that, but I'll tell you the truth. I don't like living in lies. I think that's a big reason why we're in a lot of the mess that we're in. So I mean, if I'm telling you that I'm telling you I didn't respond quickly because I didn't know. I didn't know how to handle it. That's the truth. You know, it's not ignoring you. And it's okay that you thought that I did. And for that, I apologize because that should never have been the message to you, right? That I'm ignoring you because I can't come on this podcast and say, everybody has a voice, but not her. You know, it's not going to be that way with me, you know. I just wish that it would have been done as we learn, though. As we learn. Whatever. Public, it doesn't matter. I don't care. This is a peaceful resolution and a misunderstanding that went way too far, right? And we're still family, and I love you, bro. You have whatever elder taught you, you don't even say a word. And those are the people that I learned from, the ones that don't say a word.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah. I just want to extend my love to both of you in this moment. I know. I just felt like I needed to say that poem so you could realize where I'm coming from.
And as of just a few days ago on social media, it's been nothing but, you know, positive love on both sides. But what both sides, though? You know what I'm saying? Like, there is no sides to this, you know? Yes, there's going to be those trolls and haters on social media, and I get it. I run a major social media platform myself, right? And sorry, Jessa, if I didn't reply back sooner or quicker, and I did, you know, I did elaborate that I kind of like run a very hectic social media page where it's like we get so many DMs. It's kind of confusing and nightmarish at sometimes, you know? But I'm just so blessed to be this vessel, to put you here in this table, bro, to put Jessa here, to put Zero here. Am I right? It's bizarre for me, to be honest, because I'm, like I said, guys, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm a podcast producer, content curator, hip hop promoter, and that's what I live, shit, and breathe. You know what I'm saying?
And he's used to egos, like, I try to explain it to him. It's like, dude, we're going into the Indigenous hip hop community. Just follow my lead, bro, because one little misstep and it's like, oh my God, you got to deal with the councils and things like that. And lo and behold, here we go.
And you know, and outside of this whole situation that's nothing but positivity, I've been getting so many DMs and phone calls from people that have their, you know, their opinions on how it should be done, do it this way, do it that way. But it's just like, for me, I'm taking all these different angles. I'm like, you know what? I'm unifying. Mm-hmm. I'm unifying. Yeah. If I have to be the sacrifice in all this to just be on the outsider looking in, just to give the voice to the unheard. That's my role, guys.
And you did, because Jessa felt like she wasn't being heard.
Absolutely,
and now we're
Jessa.
here.
The reason why I exist is because of you. This is what I do this for. This whole get up, this whole setup was because of you, Jessa.
But correction, it wasn't about me. It was about the Tongva Nation. I want to make sure that's very, very clear. It had nothing to do with me as an individual.
Right. And a lot of people on social media might think that way because on how, impactful social media may be. People have followers, this and this and that. But like how Justice says, it wasn't even about you.
And that's why I brought my relative here to speak and, this is your platform, whatever you want to say. And my mom's sitting over here if she wants to step in.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm here. So thank you.
No, forever. This is my mission. I told Armando, he kept hounding me about like promoting my music. And I go, don't promote my music. Promote our people's music. Oh, how are we gonna do that? Well, let's make a podcast and invite them all here and make it all inclusive. If you're a Christian rapper and you're a native and you want to talk about the story that's happening in your reservation.
Shout out Mike Bone.
Yeah. Come here.
We had Mike Bone on this podcast.
We've had all the people from across Carolina. So I'm glad that we able to, with love, talk and clear. And you came on, and Jessa, and all that stuff. And I'm not ending the podcast. I'm just happy that we're here, and I see a smile from your face, and that it was just a beautiful conversation.
I just think this is history in the making, guys. There isn't any podcast out there like this one. Where it's hip hop first, in my opinion, because Zero, at the end of the day, he's a hip hop artist. Like I went to Stonewood Mall, was going through the crates, and I saw his CD. I'm like, yo, what is this? Some indigenous hip hop shit? Like, what the fuck is this? Right? So I went home, me and my homies, rolling a blunt, 16 years old, pop in that CD. I'm like, yo, man, like that's a different perspective of hip hop, guys. Like, I want more of this. And then I started, digging into more indigenous hip hop, and like. It's not even a genre, right? It's just like a phrase. Like,
not yet.
Can I ask you, what is your definition of indigenous hip hop?
I don't have one.
Right? It's kind of vague, right?
I mean, I just think music is music.
Absolutely.
I just think like the term indigenous, we use it a lot.
Absolutely.
We use it a lot. It's a lot of stuff is being appropriated.
Right.
You guys, my relative will talk about the sage maybe a little bit. But I think like being indigenous, I'm sitting here with you guys, and just at first glance, I can say like, your ancestors are indigenous to I don't know what portion of the earth, but definitely a portion of this earth, and just the term. I just think that we're in a time right now where like having these conversations is important, and for those of us that are on this path, on this journey, kind of like are responsible maybe to like holding space to have these, and so and. I mean, when I think about indigenous, like the term and the songs, like I think about like songs, like prayer. You put down a good prayer like that, and a song that you were taught by one of your elders.
Absolutely.
Your grandfather, your grandmother, and then story, right? Like stories, because we didn't take anything down on paper. You know what I mean? And
it's all oral,
right?
Yeah.
So like we use our mouth to share these stories, right? And I think like in these stories, like they can give life or death. And so just kind of like it was, it is, it's a responsibility, to be able to share these stories and these songs. And I guess there's a way to do them, you know what I mean? Like there's a way that we're taught to kind of share these stories and share these songs. And so, yeah, I think ceremony, when I think just you off the dribble, like saying indigenous rap, I think like ceremony.
Right, yeah.
Like, if we are saying this is connected to our ancestors, then we know they prayed for us, They prayed for us and they prayed for 7 generations, and they prayed for all of us. They prayed for the children, They prayed for themselves. They prayed for our elders. And so in that, like, I would just expect, and that's like what it's about.
Right. Yeah. Like the subject matter, right? If a rapper speaks on indigenous issue, just as long as they have that subject matter, don't just label yourself an indigenous rapper just because. Right. And shout out to the first annual International Indigenous Hip Hop Awards show out of Canada. They're rolling with that. Now they're making the equivalent to is it the Grammys?
Wow,
I would
didn't know
think.
Yeah, they've
Right.
been having shows out there in Canada. Canada, they take the lead in acknowledging, as Indigenous communities,
Absolutely.
acknowledging their artistry. And so, yeah, shout out to Canada for that, for sure.
First annual International Indigenous Hip Hop Award Show.
I like the way you explained what Indigenous meant to you, because that's what I see. I already, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. It's not like I'm gonna go there and go, oh yeah, I learned this song in Sweat Lodge, I'm gonna try to put it into my song. You know, it's I have to figure out inspiration from those, translate it, intellectualize it, then perform it. So it's the same oral tradition that I've genetically opened up somehow, you know, because I know it's not me. These writings aren't me. It can't be me. This pain. I mean, I've had people come up to me and said, I heard like dead people, like I felt like it was dead people that were talking to me, like the ancestors were just straight from your mouth into my heart. And that's when I humble myself and I go, I know this isn't me. I'm a vessel, of course. I've unlocked these things, but in the hip hop genre, I chose not to use ego. I chose to use my heart. So if you see my heart through my writings, through my music, that's all I want you to see. That's why my name is Zero. I don't want you to see me, see what's coming through me, right?
Yeah, it's medicine then, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then I think now we're in a time where, I mean, I just think rap or storytelling is like we're telling our story now, our present story. Like this is the story that we're going to pass down. You know, this is the story we're going to share, like what happened now, what's happening now. Like, you know what I mean? And it's good that we're here talking about this.
And I hope it doesn't end. I hope you have more people to
You
come
know what I
on
was
here.
thinking though too, because you mentioned the word indigenous.
Yeah.
Like I'm just thinking about like indigenous, right? Like connected to the earth.
Right.
You know?
Zero, show them that hat over there. Yeah. What does that say?
Indigenous.
Shout out to Indigenous 1492. That's what we're all about, bro. I'm just trying to spread love message about that. You know what I'm saying? I'm having my little collection over there of Indigenous 1492 gear. You know, because I've been all about that since I was a kid.
I see the Mentes Diferentes too. Shout out to them.
Those are my guys. Those are my brothers right there. You know, and I want to get them on the podcast. They were the first ones like, yo, I want to get on the LA News podcast.
Well, trip on this because you mentioned that word, right? My elder, she told me, she said there was no word for like nature, right?
Absolutely.
Because that disconnected us from the earth. And when we disconnected ourselves from the earth, we disconnected ourselves from each other. So that's like the biggest lie that we're living in, right? Is that we're not connected to this earth. And then you can see like all the division that creates, right? If like I'm not connected to this and I'm not caring for this, like what's giving me life every day, because it's truly giving us life every day.
Absolutely.
Then I'm really like, then there is that conflict, that division, like us and them. You know what I mean? And that was the confusing thing about like the separation from the earth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what it means to me. You know, just what she taught me was like, be connected to that. Because if you're connected to that, like you're connected to everything.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? There is no good or bad. It's just everything's a season, right?
Absolutely,
so
brother.
I got to remember that. And it's just that you helped me by saying that word right now, because I'm thinking like, all right, what does that word mean to me? Yeah. Well, it means exactly what she said. Like, I can't believe the lie that I'm disconnected from this, because that will disconnect me from every living being, you know?
Right. And I would think that's the goal, because it's all about influencing kids. Hip hop influences kids, right? Like I was 16 years old when I bumped into his music, bro. Right? And how I see it, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't think that's relevant today, because you could always learn things as we move forward, right?
I like what you said about being connected to the earth on a level that doesn't require a title or any of that. And in the ancient philosophies, it was science and religion, right? And I've come up to work with certain foods that are high mineral based, right? What are minerals? Minerals are metal. Metal from where? From the earth. That's why the trees grow so big, because they're eating mineral, direct mineral from the earth. How is that affecting us? It goes into our river of life, which is our blood. High mineral content in your blood brings a bigger magnetic pull to the earth. In other words, if you lack mineral, your connection's off. And I could say, you're this, right? You can't tell me that. At least I'm only speaking for me, because I have a high mineral diet. I only eat once a day. I'm really connected to this earth, literally, because I eat so much mineral.
Shout out to Mananali Superfoods.
So that beautiful explanation you had, man, it's innate. There's no need to say, I'm connected to this because of this name. No, I'm connected. And then if you start scientifically putting the mineral into your bloodstream, you'll see how much you're connected. And that's where we're at. Trudell said it the best. You know, we are the minerals, we are the liquids, we are everything that she is.
We believe that we come from the earth, from her womb, right? And, you know, also in an energetic level, you know, when we drop the bodies, it's true to me, to my understanding, that we are all related, right? You are my relative. It doesn't come from a place in the earth at that point. It's your energetic field, right? That we're all connected on that energetic level. So that's really important to note as well.
Well, I mean, basic science will tell you metal and electricity fuse or conduct, right? Minerals are metal. Electricity comes from the earth. We call it gravity. It shoots up 3 miles into the air. So high levels of mineral, less food, higher energy, higher focus. That's what I want to bring back to reservations. I want to grow spirulina on reservations. I want to grow chia seeds on. This is like a 10, 20-year plan in the name of Valley natives. Here you go, guys.
But just to add to that, it's really important to note that every region of people and their genetics, their DNA, needs to deal with their food from their area, right? So like a particular blood type or ancestral connection might not do good with spirulina, right? Whereas another nation will. So it's important to bring their ancestral food back to their lands and their bodies.
Right. The only reason I mentioned those foods is because of what made that formula was my vision of the people that traveled to New Mexico from the Mayan region, the people that went from Aztec region to the Hopi region. And why would they travel so far? It wasn't for money. It wasn't for glory. It was for high mineral dense foods.
And shout out to the migration routes that we've always had. That's why we do not honor that colonial border, right? Because that takes away from not only our human routes that we have, but also our animal routes, right? And that's just, it's disgusting that we would separate such a thing of what was here thousands of years before this colonial invasion.
Yeah, there's no body of ocean. You know, there's nothing that separates. So these borders are imaginary.
Definitely.
And yeah, our ancestors traveled. Like, they just did that. You know, some of our relatives are up in Canada right now. You know, they traveled from the south and made their home here for how many years they chose to. And, you know, they traveled. And that's another part of, like, I think all of, you know, us being related and our ancestors moving like that in a good way. There was really no separation. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
And if you look at the tribal diets, even in smaller communities, even in the far away ones, they were all seed based. Why is there a seed based diet in our culture, right? Why are all the things that I explained? Spirulina is a spore, that's a seed. Chia seed, cacao bean is a seed. Maca root is a root, but it's a seed. It comes in the earth. And then a hemp seed is a seed. So there's a reason why, because inside the seed there's a tiny speck of mineral that when it hits water, the seed feeds off of it and then goes into the earth and starts to search for this mineral.
Once we get into the diet, it gets a little tricky because I'm not giving them pastrami's or chili cheese fries on me.
It's all good. No.
You know, just recently, guys, I just started changing up my diets because, you know, the influence of Zero and you know, studying more about the indigenous community. I'm kind of like, feel like, damn, like I've been poisoning myself the fucking time.
I love carne
you know,
asada burritos.
And my parents, man, my dad's from Michoacán, La Ruana. My mother's from Rosario, Argentina. And they're first generation, man. I'm first generation. They came over here, you know, not even like focusing on the true elements, right? They were just trying to, you know, live life and just raise their kids in this concrete jungle that we've been surrounded in, right? In LA. So they never they never had health as a priority, bro. I had to learn all this from outside sources, like of Zero and meeting other indigenous cats. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just so honored to be a part of all this because I'm learning as I go. I got blessed by Mama herself that I'm indígena también.
That was beautiful.
You know,
that was beautiful. I mean, Auntie.
I'm just a vessel here, guys. I feel like I'm just a vessel here, flying through the space and just uniting, regardless of what the people think. Because it's like, if it wasn't for this podcast, like I said, this table wouldn't even exist, and this round circle right here wouldn't even exist. This is a legendary show, guys.
Well, it's evident that there's a lot of love. There's a lot of fire and passion. Obviously, Jessa has a massive message beyond this.
She does not play.
Yeah, beyond this podcast, obviously. You know, and I wish her well. I wish her well in her music. I know your music you're still active in that area, and yeah, man, it's just
like
we have to show the community
first thing.
that.
Look at when I went to your profile for the first time ever, Jessa, when I was like, "Yo, who is this?" I didn't notice anything else but the hashtag rapper. That's the life that I live, bro.
It was like,
bro, religion this, religion that, right? If you ask me, Armando, I'm just curious, like, what's your religion? I'll dead eye, I'll tell you, yo, my religion is hip hop. That's what I represent. Hip hop saved my life.
That's dope, bro.
I'm sure you've never met anyone that would tell you in dead eye, like, hey man, my religion is hip hop. Most importantly, underground hip hop. One of our most popular shirts that we've sold, it says hip hop is my religion. Because people identify with that, and that's what I identify with. And fortunately, for me growing up, there was always a separate genre of hip hop that I recognized. It was called Indigenous Hip Hop. It was like more conscious, fact driven hip hop. Regardless of what the facts was and their narrative, right? Everyone has their own narratives. And believe it or not, I'm a big Christian hip hop fan as well. You know, Odd Thomas, Deviants, Tunnel Rats, you name it. Pigeon John, Elemento, LA Symphony. I don't want to leave any more names out. You know, good hip hop is good hip hop, and that's like my world. You know what I'm saying? Right? Just so like that's all I live, breathe. You know, and that's and I'm trying to lay my legacy for my future generations. Right? To only convince them, hey, just keep my work up. Just promote free thinking music rather than the new Drake that's going to get on the radio. You know, because it's like, for me, it's disgusting when I listen to the radio, bro. It's just like, it drives me insane, bro. I feel like burning down their whole buildings. That's how passionate I am.
He's a real hip hop head, I guess. I guess from, and also too, I don't know if you want to discuss the terms, but we said that we would link something to our website directly to your tribe, and so that they can understand the story.
Thank you.
No, it has to be. If we get 1 million viewers, they need to see that link. They need to know this story. You're right, man. This place is magical on another level.
It can help us, bro. Like, it's because it's not just about it's not even about us. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's like how this information can help all of us, including myself. You're talking about the diet and like going back to like, you know what I mean? Right. There's certain things I know.
I'm sure I'm saying things you're like, yo, I can relate,
I'm like,
right?
Damn, I need to start eating salmon. Like I should be eating acorns and berries and stuff. But there's just there's that, the diet, and there's like the ocean, that can help us heal. Mm-hmm. There's ceremony there in that ocean, and it's been happening for thousands of years, and it can help us. And so, see, these are some of the things, like when you think about them, like why do when I go to the beach, or why so many people want to live there? Like, and right now it's you only can live there if you got money, right? And
large amounts of money,
right? And if you think like our ancestors lived there, and it was like okay for them to live there, and it wasn't about money, but there was a reason why they lived there. There was this benefit, this healing spiritual benefit, and so those are like, that's good stuff to have. You know what I mean? That's good information to have, like in your heart, especially if you're raising kids and you live here in this part of the,
Well, now that I know that, I the connection elevates.
Right.
And also, to acknowledge, you said your grandfather was buried here, right? Like, I also need people to understand, if your family is buried here, like my mom always says, then you are connected to this area. This is your home now, right? So knowing that this is now your home, I think the biggest message we want to ask and share of is take care of your home now, because it hurts us when we see the destruction of the Los Angeles River, when we see the destruction of all the cities, of the way that they've destroyed our freshwater springs, our hot water springs, you know. So if this is your home now, which it is, help us to take care of it. That's like our biggest ask. Help us to beautify and honor the land that we all call home now.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That, I think that was the on top of, you know, taking ancient foods to these regions and to these poor places, you know, it was to do workshop and informational stuff. That's where we would be like, oh, let's call this guy, you know, and at that point. But right now we're in step one, phase one, promoting something and having extremely important conversations in a loving way, like we're doing right now. This is the biggest thing that we could do for our community, is to sit down across from each other and not have any animosity, maybe have some passion, you know, because we can't let that go. That's right. You know? I don't think Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse all sat there really quiet and humble. I think they were very passionate people, and they had people that would support them and their vision and their thing. And I hope one day we get those elders back, those type of elders back, you know, and I think in the future we will. You know, not because I don't want to put myself in that category. I'm just humble. I want to be humble. I want to be respectful. And that's why we're here, in a good way, you know? Yeah.
So I had a conversation with a couple of the homies and stuff, and they were calling me a futurist. How, like, everyone's talking about the past and the pain and stuff, and then, like, they're like, yo, low key, you're kind of like a futurist, because they're like, you were able to create a podcast that's talking about these issues to find solutions moving forward in the future. Am I right? And I tripped out on that, bro. I was just like, yo, really? That's how you guys see me as? I'm like, yo, that's just a super honor. Am I right? Because it's like, I've been kind of living that lifestyle, being a futurist for Underground Hip Hop Blog, because I'm always trying to think ahead, trying to have 5 steps ahead of the game when it comes to how to promote independent hip hop and how to expand those audiences, right? And it just seems to me, I've been doing Underground Hip Hop Blog for years. I love the team that's behind us. It's not just one individual that runs it. There's a whole spectrum of people. But how is it that we launched this Indigenous Hip Hop podcast, and then within months, bro, we're just kicking up noise, kicking up dust. And then it just is happening so quick. So in retrospect, as I think about it, I'm like, man, maybe I am a futurist, because it has to take someone like myself to get to take initiative to put out content that's actually useful for society. That's how I think, bro. It's pretty the weird world that I live in.
When we add the tongue twist, I know there's hundreds of them, probably thousands of these stories. I mean, we could just get 10 of them somehow and figure out how to link this youth, because they're very hungry for knowledge and to walk in a better way and communicate in a very clear way, and just be gentle with each other. Because we I don't know, it's just always, for my 20-year career, it's always been like, and this is just maybe the internal work that I need to do, that, you know, you're always treated like that step kid, man, like, get to sit over there, you know, and I humbled myself. I'm 46 years old. I didn't just start rapping like this. I've been doing this for 20 years, and now I have a voice, and this is my voice. This is our voice.
So look, Jessa, I have to ask. How long have you been rapping? What are your latest projects? Any music videos you want to highlight? I have to ask. I want to.
Because he's a hip hop head.
Yeah, like how long have you been in the game?
I started rapping when I was 12 years old. I got into a cypher that I just thought, that's easy, I can do it. So I did it. And that just kind of opened the door for me. I've been a writer, though, since I was 8 years old. And I'm going to be dropping a music video called Goddess Gang. The song is currently out now everywhere, but the music video will be dropped maybe within the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so, where we're just talking about it right now, looking at the edits and figuring out what we want to do with it and how. But it's definitely, it's to raise elevation and love of self, you know. And so I dedicate it to our men as well, as we all have feminine and masculine energies within us. But as you know, we know the women aren't as deep as the men in the game, so I want to make sure we elevate our women as well.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I'm one of the biggest female hip hop supporters in the world. If you just go on our website, we promote just as many women as men because, you know, ultimately it should just be off of merit. That's how I think. Doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're dope, you get on. Am I right? Like, yo, like.
Well, that's the way most people, production companies kind of work, and you work hard to do it. And Jess has been doing it for a long time. Like I said, I've known her for a long time, and now it's time to get into getting into these issues that I didn't even know we had a fight with the LA River. I mean, I always just accepted colonization as that's their land and they're going to do with it whatever they want, but they can't hold my spirit, and they can't hold my connection. They can't hold my diet. They can't hold my exercise practices, and they can't hold my oral tradition to my children. And I want to share those stories, the Tongva stories with them, because we are on their land and we enjoy their beaches and we really, really connect as a family.
But to go back to the hip hop, just want to give you props though, because not a lot of artists jump into the game, jumping into ciphers and battling and, you know, actually confronting face to face with another, you know, opponent in that cipher session. You know, a lot of rappers, as you know, just start in the garage recording a few tracks and then they label themselves as a rapper. But, that's a great foundation, though, Jessa. You know, battling, going into ciphers. Much respect, Jessa.
Thank you. Now let's go back to the LA River, though.
Yeah.
Because I want to acknowledge also, you know, that LA River also connects us to the Paiute Nation as well, and Bayahunaru, right? Because what's happening now is that river is so devastated, right? It's so devastated that we needed another water source. So what do? Well, he who owns the water owns the man, and so we just take full control. And when I say we, I mean colonialism. And so they went into Bayahunaru, into the Paiute Nation, and stole their water to bring it here to LA, right? And so in that harsh reality, that unites the Tongva people with the Paiute in a way we never wanted. You know, so this information is very important, and I would like to shout out my sister, Annie, who has a documentary called The Aqueduct Between Us on YouTube. So if you can check that out, The Aqueduct Between Us, she mends the voices of the Paiute Nation and the Tongva Nation, right? And she lets our voices be heard in this. So I think it's really important because for those of us who live in LA, we should know about the land that we're living on. We should know about the water sources and what's wrong and what's right, and you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, it goes back to thinking for the next 7 generations. And if we don't know what's happening to our LA River, then how can we care for the next 7 generations, right? So yeah, it's very contaminated, and we need to uphold the responsible parties to say, hey, take accountability and heal these waters and let us show you how to do it, but you messed it up and your funding is going to come in place for this, and we have to hold them accountable, right? As people who live here on this land.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've always, even if you know me for my whole career, I've never taken I used to fight with my group all the time. I was like, dude, I'm not protesting, bro. I'm just sharing, you know, and I have to find a balance on how to do that.
But we're not protesters, we're protectors.
I mean, I guess, yeah, like in that way. Like I always thought great creative content makes you think about it, and then, you know, you go into action. But my part is the creative part of it, you know, going deep within self and trying to find that. Because people don't even connect with the river at all. They don't care about the Alley River or any other river it's on. They care about going to Starbucks. They care about going to buy a soda.
They care about shooting a goddamn music video at the LA River, trying to get the scenery out there.
Yeah, the
the
graffiti. It's not about the river. But as we progress and learn how to do balance and inspire these kids, that's the challenge. How can I make it cool enough to make a metaphor or a connection with the person's spirit to that? That's my challenge as an artist, as a creative.
And I want to highlight that the whole protesting thing, like you nailed it in the coffin, Jessica. You're a land protector. Big difference between protester and land protector. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's where we draw the attention is in educating our children and reminding them this river, it wasn't, what do they call it? Resource, right? Like we don't see these families, these relatives, we see them as relatives. We know, we acknowledge, right, that the river has a spirit, right? That's when we drink water to elevate our spirit, to continue our life source and force, right? And so understanding that there was a whole system in place before they destroyed our river with concrete and what have you, and their chemicals, right? Like you had the rocks, you had the pebbles, you had the sand, you had the roots of the water plants, you had the water plants. All of these played a role. Even, a lot of people don't know this, and I know, I'm gonna look at you right now. Did you know that we had salmon in that river?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and that we had trout in that river?
Maybe the trout, but not the salmon.
And that we had grizzly bear.
Oh, wow.
At that river.
Well, check out these comments. There's shout out to Neen. He or she says, "Is that even a real river? It's all concrete." See?
Yeah, and that river, we didn't control it. She kind of like moved here and there. Sometimes she would shift, but she's always been there. She has always been our river, and so it's the colonized mind that says I have to control it. I have to, put this concrete in because the native people told us not to live here so close to the river, and we didn't listen to them, and we're not going to talk about that. But we recognize that now because we did it, the flooding that occurred has killed people, and we don't want to take accountability, so we want to punish the river. It's the river's fault. So that's why we have to put the concrete and own control of it, and so that way, nobody else has access to this river, and we have to sell the water to them. Right? Why are we purchasing water? Why? When she was a relative that supported us pre-colonial times. There should be no reason that we're paying for water that's in our ancestral territory and people who live here on our ancestral territory. We shouldn't be going to Walmart or wherever these places are that we buy our bottle of water. Do you drink water from the tap?
No, I don't.
Do you drink water from the tap?
I have to be honest.
Because we know it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
We don't want to touch that, right?
Yeah.
So we buy it, and that, and when we buy it, now we're harming somebody else's ancestral territory because they're taking this water source from somewhere else.
And it's the it's the most grimiest industry. Sparkless, they closed us a goddamn contract right here. We have, sparkless water, and then now I got hit with like a $200 bill, and I'm just like, yo,
it's expensive.
Yeah. And what are we paying for? We're paying for water that was stolen from somebody else's territory that they're not even seeing that profit.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
The Paiute people aren't seeing the profit.
And voices like this need to be heard, guys. Like, this whole hip-hop thing, you could get so caught up into it, and just get so disconnected with your reality. Am I right? So, Jessa, I want to give you props for speaking on issues like this, because these are issues that I'm very unfamiliar with, being from, the concrete jungle of Los Angeles. That's how I call it, the concrete jungle out here,
But I want to help you to understand is like, when you're traveling up these hills in LA that are, roads, that was a real hill. It is a real hill. They just covered it with junk.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you break that open, she's still alive and well down there. And then me and my dad and my mom were talking about this. Is these? I remember in the back of the art of the Homeboy Industries, there's a walnut tree that's just growing out of the concrete. Right? And so right now she's taking herself back, and she's popping up all because in LA, Tongva territory, all of LA County and then some, we're big on walnuts. We have walnuts here that we've always utilized, and she's coming back up. All these walnut trees are just showing up
through the concrete. Wow. And like that, if that's not love, then I don't know what is. Like, think about something that will break through anything to be there for you. Right?
You know what would be important before we leave? What are like the sacred plants for the Tongva? So we, as LA natives, as we grow in Las Taslan and we're figuring out our new true road and trying our new connection with LA due to a beautiful discussion we had. Give us something. I know there's white sage, right? I'll say the first one, sage. And walnuts are obviously another one, right?
Yeah.
That would be another one.
That's the white sage is our big fight because it's been so noted. And so it's kind of scary for me to sit here and tell you what our sacred plants are, right? Because
Oh.
it's the fear of people saying, oh, well, we're going to go utilize it and sell it, right? But I'll tell you, all of our plants are sacred. And so if you want to know what California plants are, like, yeah, you know, we have the white sage, the sagebrush. We have many different types of sage. The coastal hummingbird sage. We have
See, I didn't even know about the coastal.
we have our oak trees are very sacred to us, right? Because we utilize the acorn. The walnut trees are very sacred to us. I mean, there's lists upon lists.
I didn't mean like the sacred ceremonial plants. I meant
Right.
plants that you could, like, you know how you refer to the river as a relative, like a
Right.
tree, a certain type of tree species that's original to this land could be that old
Right.
relative.
So everything.
Yeah, and so you've
Everything
got
is a relative.
the walnut and the acorn is a very sacred one, and we still do. I don't know why I said we would. We use the walnut shells for games, for dice games, right? And we use our tar, and we use certain things to make our games, and so yeah, those plants are very sacred to us because they're what give us life.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what, guys? Thank you for the chat. You guys are lit. I just want to thank Jessa for coming on and creating this discussion. You know, yes, everyone on social media might have taken it and twisted it in a certain way, but that's what it's all about, you know. And I just want to tell you, we had no bad intentions on anything. Am I right? Like, I'm just an outsider looking in, trying to create some content for the people, and I believe I just did that. You know, am I right, Zero?
Yeah, you did.
We have a concert coming up June 25th. I think it's in a couple of days. It's been a whirlwind at the event. I'm so busy. I got like another 10 shows lined up, but I think this is going to be the most vital show coming up June 25th, just to support the podcast, just to support what you've been listening, you know. 40 episodes in, tens of thousands of streams, guys. And this is what it came up to, a dope, humble event. We're trying to get some great minds together to speak what they believe in, you know, Indigenous issues and topics and that great subject matter. June 25th at the Catch One. Tickets are available on Eventbrite. We got more events coming soon. We got some amazing special guests coming on board to this podcast. You name it. It's an inclusive podcast. We've never meant to, you know, erase or eliminate any type of tribe out there. You know, people know that, you know, this is such a great conversation to have, guys. And it's such an honor, Zero and Jessa and Mama Bear over there, and Father Bear.
And
you know what I'm saying? And shout out to Heron right here.
I was about
you
to
know?
shout him out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heron, you know, like, man, you're definitely a one of a kind brother to me, Bran, and it just thank you for supporting us, and thank you for supporting Jessa, and thank you for being the mediator and the spark under our asses to create this behind the scenes meeting that was just so influential for myself, you know.
And Yvette.
Yeah, and Yvette.
Yvette, shout out to Yvette, right? And again, my goal is to make this podcast the home for Indigenous hip hop worldwide. That was the intention since day one, brother. Right? And is it my fault that the vessel is hip hop? No, it's not. Right? Jessa, she's a rapper. Zero, he's a rapper. Everyone that we interview are rappers. Right? And I believe hip hop will save the world in the right way.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on the show and clarifying things. Thank you for sharing whatever medicine you shared with us. I hope that this was enough and clear that where we were coming from. And I know this isn't the first or the last time that we see each other, because I think, with this conversation, we created a relationship, as any other natives that would come here. And
can I ask you, have you ever been on a podcast before?
Yeah.
Bro, you definitely conduct yourself very well, man. I love your output, your delivery, man. It's
trying to give you a show, bro.
Definitely no, it's definitely one of a kind. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he's humble as heck.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I'm a rookie at this. I don't even consider myself a podcaster, bro. But thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for having us.
Jessa, thank you for being here. Like, your guys' story is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, bro.
Absolutely, and I'll leave you guys the last words, man. You're in your own home, and we're here to be with you. And Jessa, you can have some last words, and you can last words. And after the last words, Mom will just cut it off, bro.
Absolutely,
this is their territory, Tungva land, Chumash land.
Well, thank you for having us on. Thank you for having these uncomfortable conversations that we've had and sharing space with us. All of our space is sacred. At this moment in time, I just want to share so much love to Auntie Julia, who we believe, you know, is our connection. You know, that's what me and Jose share in common, is our love for Auntie Julia. I will always fight for you, Auntie. Your biggest push was invisible no more. You know, your children will never be invisible again. And that is why I do what I do, to ensure that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and all of our relations will never be invisible again, you know. And healing, Auntie Julia was a big advocate for all of our people coming together and healing. And so I stand for and with Auntie Julia when I walk my walk. So I just want to uplift her. And Auntie Barbara, you know, we love and we miss you. And everything that we do is for those who have gone before us and for those who are coming next.
Yeah. Oh, man, thank you for saying that, cousin. And I want to do the same and, you know, honor my grandfather, my grandmother, Auntie Julia, and all of our relatives, you know, that are in the spirit world guiding us. You know, Auntie Julia, she shared a story with me. There's a story about the crying rocks. You know, you'll hear about it. And these rocks, some people took it as like our ancestors were crying, you know, and she told me that we were strong people, you know, like we were a strong people. And, you know, you hear these stories through history and in these books, right, that they teach you. And when you go to school, you got these books and they teach you about certain things. And you know, that, you know, the submissive native and, you know, all these things that our ancestors went through and how we responded to them. And she said that, you know, these rocks were, these certain acts were happening, these vicious acts on our ancestors were happening. And she said, like, we didn't cry, you know, like we embraced it. We embraced the transition into the other side. She said, but the rocks themselves were crying. The earth was crying. And that's why they call them the crying rocks. And, you know, and if you think about that, and your ancestors and our ancestors are strong people, you know, because we're still here after all these years and all this trauma and all this pain. And that was one of the biggest things, you know. You would ask Auntie Julia, how does it feel to be a Tongva woman? You know, and she said, it feels invisible. And so my responsibility, you know, as well as my relatives, is like to make it so the day will come where our Tongva women, where they don't feel invisible. You know, where they feel seen and where they feel heard. And so I appreciate you guys for you know, being a part of that, because that's big. You feel me? That's big. And I appreciate you guys, you know, and I honor you that in a good way like that, for you being a part of making our Tongva women visible, you know, and our tribe visible and our ancestors visible. So thank you guys for having us here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a legendary show. We will be back this Sunday. We got the academy, the college. Head on. What's the title to the? LA College Academy Prep. We got the principal coming in this Sunday. He's a very special guest. It was the individual where we had the meeting at.
Another hip hop head.
Yeah, he's another hip hop head, and it's such an honor to have him in the on the podcast. He will be at the event this Friday as well. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Such a lit chat, such a lit audience that we're having. Subscribe to our website, LANativespodcast.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube page, Twitch, Facebook, you name it. We are wrapping up the show. Zero of El Vuh. We got Jessa. Such a legendary show. What you think? I want to ask you. Great. Yeah. Thank you, man. Again, I want to shout out everyone in this room. Behind the scenes, we got Head On. We got Mama Bear, Papa Bear. Got my lady over there. We got Jessa's son.
My son, Honor. And then my relative, Jose.
Jose. Bro, this won't be the last time I talk to you, Jose. You know, I just feel like we have a deep connection, man, just with the little that we've known each other, you know? Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you guys this Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Love and blessing.